back to another episode of Word Up with Danny Katz. Today I am joined by registered nurse, sexual healer, Tantra teacher, quadruple Aquarius. Wait, make that grounded quadruple Aquarius, and stunning, beautiful woman creature, Shari James. Shari, how are you?
I'm good. I'm hot, but I'm good.
Yes, he seems to be the through line today. We both have our air conditioning on. Shari, it's been so long since we've dropped in, and there've been I moved to New Mexico, you moved to Florida. I know we both miss California in our own ways.
Okay.
The reason why I wanted to have you on is to talk about men and women and the capital M masculine and the capital F feminine, because you have such a unique perspective. I see you as someone who's on the front lines. Give us an overview of where you're at with this these days.
Ah, I mean, really, I've been working directly with men for 30 years because I do count being naked in a man's lap as working with him
Mm-hmm.
because you learn a lot, right? All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, like guys like to talk. Maybe it's because my top is off, but guys really do like to talk and they like to be seen and listened to, right? And so that's when I started to figure out, oh, it's almost like I'm a naked therapist and I can just charge by the half hour type of thing. So
And
I
in
think,
what capacity were you naked and on men's laps?
oh, the uh, temple dancing, stripping, lap dancing, that sort of thing. So,
Okay, cool.
um,
I have to ask you because I'm always curious to know, like, what your presentation was, like what your costumes were, like what your kind of archetype was when you were doing that work.
I designed my own costumes. I loved a good halter top at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think back in the day, it's funny because I was into harder music. Like that was like a lot of like kind of heavy metal and stuff. So I would dance to
Okay.
metal, which is so funny because it doesn't look like I would be. But at the time, occasionally I still like that again. But
Okay, cool.
so
Thank
I think I have like a kind of a 30-year, I mean, oh God, it's probably more than 30 years now, actually, arc
Yeah.
of like, working with men. And then of course I'm aging and maturing and evolving as so I do feel like I have a different perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And can you walk us through the trajectory? Like I know that you had a Kundalini awakening. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that influenced your path?
Yeah, that changed everything. That definitely changed everything. So at the time, I was actually very involved in comedy in
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
and I had this big Kundalini awakening. And the way that I like to describe it is it felt like I was being made love to by the divine.
And did it happen spontaneously? Like, what were you doing in the moment?
I was working with my spiritual teacher in Marina Del Rey at the time, and he just said, "Look into my eyes and breathe." And there was a lot of emotional pain that preceded that, which I think helps to get, catalyze awakenings, of course. And then all of a sudden, I felt my heart open. I went straight out, and I was seeing like DNA strands going by me. And God, I get like the goosebumps thinking about it, even though it was so long ago. And I heard laughter come out of me that wasn't my laughter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I was being laughed.
Ooh.
And I think like laughter's my thing. I love to laugh and I love being funny. So now I feel like the pressure is going to be on for me to be funny for this, but
No
um,
pressure.
so the Kundalini awakening, so when you have one, you're given a gift. And at that time, it's kind of like if your body's like a computer, it's like the universe puts new software in.
Mm-hmm.
So I got like the Tantra sexual healer software.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very strange because all of a sudden people were showing up in my life to be healed that had sexual problems. And
Mhm.
I sound like I had a web. I don't. Do we even have websites? Like in 2006 we had them, I think, but I didn't even have a website. Literally, like, oh, I got your name from someone at the gym. I need to come see you. And I'm thinking, okay, I didn't even know what to charge. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I just kind of how I do everything is I just jump in and figure it out.
Mhm.
So that just kept growing and evolving over the years.
And so, I mean, 30 years and in obviously in different capacities, like working with men, what have you learned about men that most of us don't know? And how have you seen men shift throughout this period?
Hmm. Boy, I know it's not good to have dead air on interviews, but man, that's like such a huge question. I think that I would what probably say in the last 4 years, I mean, we're seeing a mass awakening of the feminine
Mhm.
that is requiring the masculine to step up
Mhm.
in a way that had not really preceded this.
Mhm. And how do you see, we'll go slowly. How do you see this mass awakening of the feminine?
Well, I think first of all, it was energetic,
Mhm.
right? And then that manifests physically. I know you're a quantum person.
Mhm.
And I think the Me Too movement was a manifestation of that.
Mhm. And so how did you, because I know that you have men's groups and women's groups, is that correct?
Yeah, women's group for business,
Mhm.
which is very different, and men's group for the ED work, sexual healing, relationship stuff, dating stuff, all that.
Yeah. And so from your perspective, was it like men were kind of where they were until this women's awakening and now men are showing
They,
up differently?
well, they have to.
Okay.
They're being required to. I mean, they don't have a choice. It's kind of like be alone or step up.
Mhm.
I think it's still very polarizing.
Yeah.
It's slowly becoming not a man's world
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, and I know a lot of men would say it's never been a man's world. But I think if they were in a female body, they would say that differently.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, I think there's a lot changing, but it's men have to really rise. I mean, if you look back over the years, who's been in all the spiritual pursuits? It's been predominantly women that are into spirituality and grow and personal growth, and there's been a critical mass of us. So,
Mhm.
right? So now
Yeah.
with, of course, compassion, ideally, right? Now it's like, okay, we want to invite you to rise.
Mhm. And so are you seeing men more willing to do this kind of work and to step into deeper realms of spirituality, self-awareness?
Yeah, and what's cool is, there's two different options to work with me. There's privately, and then there's the men's group.
Mhm.
And guys are like, "Oh my God, I've been wanting to be in a men's group. This is great." And and I don't know if I even would have heard that, because I've been doing this particular work for 15 years. I don't think I would have heard that 15 years ago.
Mhm.
So I think men's groups are also becoming more popular. I think men in a lot of ways are so much more isolated
Mhm.
than women are. So
Mhm.
there's definitely appeal to being in a men's group. And what's nice, I feel like I'm in a position of privilege
Mhm.
because I'm a female running a men's group.
Yeah. Speak more about that. Like,
It's different. It's different. You know, guys can be, oh my God, I'm gonna get emotional because it's so beautiful to watch. Oh, guys can be getting goosebumps.
oh.
Um, so helpful and tender to each other.
Mm.
And that's what I see in the group. I've been doing it for 3 years, and I honestly had no idea if any guys would even come into it, you know?
Mhm.
It was like people are like, there's no way guys are gonna do this. And it's been really taking off, and it's been a great experience for everyone involved. But guys are really even helping other guys and guiding other guys in the group. And there might be some nights where I just lean back
Mhm.
and they're giving each other guidance, and I'm like, cool, I'll chime in every now and then, right, to keep everything directed. And I think the other interesting thing, because I feel like on some level you may have wanted to touch on polarity today.
Totally.
And I was just teaching on polarity Monday for my group. So I'm really in the masculine position as the group leader. Like I really am kind of like the top dog, right?
Yeah.
So they're in the receptive and I'm in the directive.
Mhm.
So for me, it's really interesting to be in that place, but also to stay in my feminine while I'm in that place.
And is
So
that a source of tension for you? Does that come naturally for you to hold both?
I I can definitely hold both. And what that looks like for me, because it's a tricky thing to articulate. Uh, oh my gosh. Okay. When someone's asking me a question from their ego and challenging me, it's very tempting to engage my mind or my ego,
Hmm.
but I can still be in a place of authority and speak from my intuition and my heart.
Mm.
So like, oh, I just got goosebumps on
Yeah,
goosebumpy today.
that really landed.
Okay, yeah. So that's really, I think, the trick with female leadership,
Hmm.
right? Because you're going to be challenged. You will not, anyone in a leadership position is going to be challenged, whether you're with, I have my women's group, right, too. So I have both polarities. And in my women's group, I'm very much a disciplinarian
Hmm.
in a lot of ways.
So are you showing up more so in your masculine with the women's group than in the feminine?
Until it's my turn to speak.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm holding the container, right? In both situations, I've created the field. I'm holding the container. I'm attracting in. But when it's my turn to share in the women's group, I'm definitely in my feminine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think, this whole polarity thing, some of the teachers I'm seeing out there are making me cringe.
Hmm.
Um, I had to get rid of them, some of the groups and some of the things on some of the guys on Facebook that are these polarity teachers, because I would read their stuff, right? And so as an awakened female, I'm feeling everything with my body, right? My nervous system's attuned, I'm like a clear channel, and the things I would read would like hurt my nervous system.
Can you give me us an example of something that you would read that would hurt your nervous system?
It just seems like some of these guys want to take you back to the 1950s and just sit there and be submissive and
Mm.
let them lead everything. And if you really know what you're doing about with polarity, you can have so much fun switching it up
Hmm.
and keeping the best relationships I've ever had. That's what we were able to do.
Hmm.
And that kept it fresh and interesting. And the man was able to relax and know that a woman had his back.
Right.
So it just seems narrow.
Yeah. Yeah, that really resonates. So I'm curious in terms of the men now being called to step up and knowing that we live in a polarity construct form of equal and opposite energetics, where are the women being invited to shift right now? Like what distortions are we being called on to realchemize?
Damn, that's a good question. Um, ugh, probably women are, yeah, we're in such a tricky paradigm. Oh boy, it's everything is kind of a mess in so many ways, right? Because I'm single and every now and then I'm an accidental cougar. It's I've been an accidental cougar throughout my life,
Mhm,
and I'm talking to these guys, let's just say the cutoff is 30s.
mhm,
But I'm talking to them in their 30s, and they're like, it just seems like every woman my age wants like a rich guy. And like, I do well, I do okay, I am ambitious, but like, I'm not rich.
mhm.
So there's still some of that, which that's I don't know, it's a little risky. I think I think a woman still needs to be able to take financial responsibility for herself,
Mhm,
take emotional responsibility for herself, and to not put everything on a man.
mhm.
Unless you're married, you have a contract in place, you have clear agreements like as to your roles.
Yeah. And
So,
does that apply like early courtship, like first date, expecting the dude to pay? Do you feel like that's some sort of distortion?
it feels natural.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels natural to me for the man to take the lead and to pay.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah, I mean, I am a business woman and a healer, and clearly I'm capable of being extremely alpha,
Mhm.
but I'm happy to, cool, where are we going? You know, I'm happy and sometimes I get exhausted too, like from having to provide every provision for myself.
I feel
So,
the same. Yeah, I feel like, similarly, I run so much masculine energy in my life, in my career and all of those things. So when I am in a romantic relationship, especially in the beginning, because
mhm.
I agree with you, like, yes, of course, we always want to be switched, be able to switch off and play all the roles, but I really want to be the girl.
Yeah, okay. So here's like a kind of a topic that just popped into my head if you want to talk about this. So I'm noticing that even just talking to a guy on the phone, there's guys that automatically inspire me to want to wear a skirt
Hmm.
or like loose or like flowy pants
Hmm.
or pants. There's something in the conversation or their vibe and I'm like, I would rather wear a skirt any day. Like I'm fine with that.
And is that like some energetic, or have you tracked like what specifically inspires the wardrobe
It's
choice?
a very masculine energetic, right? Because
Yeah.
if that energetic is there, then it's putting me in my like feminine flow.
Yeah,
And when I'm
totally.
my, I wore, in fact, I wore, even though no one's gonna see my skirt, I wore a skirt for this interview. So,
Thank you. And I'm wearing the pants, so we're nice and balanced.
see, like we did it.
We rocked it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very I mean if you have any topics you want to bring up, but I kind of have some things on my mind. It's just it's a really interesting time to date. There's a lot of I think confusion between men and women these days that also did, come from the Me Too movement, which of course is a fantastic thing, but there's a lot of like, oh, like I don't like it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, we can go anywhere because we're Aquarian sisters. So, I honor your inspiration.
Woo!
I find it really bizarre. I mean, I haven't been on a date in a little bit, but I remember around like 2019, I was in a date with some guy and he said, "May I have your consent to put my arm around you?" And I literally felt my vagina seal itself up. And I'm like, don't ever talk to me like that again. Like, grab me.
But see, that is very confusing for a man to hear. I think, like, when I'm working with my guys, I'm like, you can even like do little things to test the waters, kind of like if you're having dinner and kind of her hand is down, maybe just like touch her hand for a second. And don't think about yourself, but read what's going on with her. If she's kind of like, right there, like, or even you feel like any kind of a contraction or a withdrawal, like in that attempt for connection, do not go further.
Okay, we have to stop because I love that you're teaching men this. I love it. It's so valuable. And I'm wondering because I've always wondered, like, I'm not giving any signs that I'm interested in touch. For me, it's also energetic, right? So
Hmm.
I'm curious to know, like, are men wired such that it's harder for them to pick up on those subtle signals?
They just have to be taught to look for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you have to not be thinking about yourself and what you want. Like, we know you want to have sex with us.
Right.
You don't have to say it, text it, or send a dick pic.
Right.
Like, we know. We're certain of it. If you're out on a date with us, you're probably maybe thinking at some point, I'd love to put it in, like
Right.
at the base level, like we get that. So, and that's something that you want, and that's fine because that got you to dinner.
Right.
And at a certain age, maybe you want great conversation and companionship and laughter, and maybe you want more layers to that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, you know, when you're not, when you're focused on connecting with the other person and not thinking about your own agenda, yes, you can tune into and read the signals.
And is this like kind of a life-changing aha for the men that you're working with?
I don't know if it's an aha or not. I mean, when you kind of ask them to do a recap at the end of what they got out of, working with me or the talk for the day, then yeah, I mean, that definitely comes up and they do go out and practice it.
Mm-hmm. Um, does anyone like dick pics? Do you like receiving them? I've
No.
never met one woman who likes those.
Here's my rule. I have to meet it in person at least once in order to get some type of a dick pic afterwards. If
Right.
there's a dick pic preceding it, it's not going to happen. And I've even had to have that conversation last week, in fact. I'm like, whatever you do, don't. I can hear it in your voice. You're tempted to do it. Don't do it. Don't. Don't trust me. Don't do it.
Yeah, I have male friends who tell me like, "Oh, I sent her a dick pic and she got pissed." And I'm like, "Why would you?" Maybe gay men like that, but I can guarantee that straight women are not. That's not a great courtship strategy.
No, it's just so here's where this is coming from. So like men are ruled visually and women are ruled auditorily.
Mm-hmm.
So and this has been my biggest in fact I'm angry today about this. This has been my biggest like frustration with dating is I'm like we have to have some conversations. Like it can't be all texting. And I'm literally like, here's the list. It's not a big list, it's basic human decency and behavior. But here are some things you can do in order for me to take my skirt off, right?
What's on the
So
list?
I need to hear your voice.
Mm-hmm.
I have to hear the person's voice. It gets me excited.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear the, if you're a woman who's sensitive to energy, you can hear the energetic signature.
Mm-hmm.
I've had heart openings just from talking to a man on the phone because he had like his like right like vocal tone had the keys to unlock my heart
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or make more happen than that. Just not even talking sexy. So I think guys are trying to speak to us in a visual language and
Mm.
it's not landing. In fact, it's not working at all. And they're like, what's wrong? And it's because speak to us in our freaking language, man. Get
Mm.
auditory with us. and
Yeah.
be auditory when you are having sex. I don't mean talk. God, talking can be annoying. Make freaking sounds. Like, sound it out, people. Get primal, get loud. Let us know where you are in time and space when we're having sex with you.
Yeah.
So, I think that's what this is rooted in, is they're trying to speak to us in their language and we're trying to speak to them in our language.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that we're not visual, because we definitely are.
Yeah, of course. Of course. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of like that kind of fundamental breakdown that has been that we've been wrestling with. What is the dating world like, and how have you seen it change and morph throughout your time on the planet?
Oh my God. It's tough out there, man. Like, it's it's really, I really thought that when I got into my 50s, dating was going to be easier.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. And it's not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a phenomena that I didn't experience in LA that I'm experiencing in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I call it the lean back.
Okay.
Even at a restaurant, like, guys, I hope my chair reclines far enough. Like, the guys are so freaking lean back. I'm like, am I just supposed to jump on your dick? They're too relaxed. I'm like, lean in, man. So
So, do you think that's a relaxation thing? Do you think it's a fear thing? Do you think it's like more an East Coast, like social etiquette thing?
it's not working, whatever it is, wherever it's coming from. I'm like, you're not on a beach chair, you're at a restaurant. So that's like my little Florida vent. Because I think people, like, I was in California for about 25 years, and this wasn't on purpose, but I only ever went out with guys that were connected to Hollywood in some way.
Okay.
Even if they were a professional chef, like, they were working for the stars. Like, there was always some connection. And I think to be there and to compete in that creative environment, you got to be like A game, A game, A game.
Yeah.
So I'm used to A game for 25 years, and now I'm getting B game, like the beach chair game. So it's
Mhm.
definitely different on the East Coast versus the West Coast.
Yeah. I hear that. I feel like one thing that I've noticed is it seems like men have gotten less courageous, less willing to face rejection in terms of making a move, asking me out, letting me know they're interested. I feel like, and like in my, the story I've made up is that that's because of online dating and waiting to get like a like or a match to have that signal. So that muscle has become atrophied. Have you experienced that?
I agree, which is why when someone does approach me in person, even if I'm not interested, I'm so kind
Hmm.
and I encourage them, and I appreciate, I am like, I really appreciate you, like, approaching me. And, I'm either not available or I'm not, there's something here I'm not feeling. But I encourage, like, I'm like, please keep approaching women in person. Like, I'm really nice about it. I'm like, keep going, man. Because you had like the courage, good for you. You had the courage to do it in person.
I love that. Do you think that's an Aquarian thing? Because I have that too. Like when I see a single person demonstrating a behavior quality that I think is awesome or will help humanity, I'm like their cheerleader. Like keep doing that thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I have so many friends in astrology, and it's like I don't even need to know it because I'm fed it every day. So I don't
Right,
even know.
right. Yeah, I feel like that's a California thing because people are always like, "Oh, you've studied astrology," and I'm like, "No, it's just like the air that I breathe, being
Yeah,
born and raised in LA."
definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's challenging. Online dating is really challenging because, right? So as a woman, like, there is that auditory component, and we're not getting any of that on online dating. We're getting
Right.
just like the visual. And so I'm going off the visual and I'm seeing, what's appealing to my eyes. Now, I've adjusted my vision to be appropriate with my age group.
Hmm.
I think, I don't know if men
What
do
is your
that.
range? What is your age range?
I have on there 40 to 60, and I mean, I don't care if people know my age, like I'm 53. So I feel like that's reasonable.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there like, do you make connections with people of a certain age better than others?
Mm, I'm right around 50. I would
Hmm.
say I right around my natural age, I connect better with.
Hmm.
I just think
And
there's more commonality.
yeah, of course. And I think Gen X is really specific in our unique experience of, I mean, everything. We're Pluto and Libra. We're familiar with the internet, but we grew up without it. I think there's just kind of a uniqueness to our generation.
Yeah, I I didn't have my first computer until I was 27.
Mm.
And I in my early 20s or my 20s, I drove across the United States 3 times by myself in a little two-seater car with my two cats. I don't think I didn't have a cell phone and I didn't have GPS. I had a map
Yeah,
and I figured it out, man. You know? So like it's a very different time to be alive.
totally. Yeah. I remember in my 20s, I bought a one-way ticket to India with a backpack and a couple pairs of underwear and just figured it out. And I had a friend who's in his 20s and he went to Thailand and he was like texting me from Thailand and telling me that he was on Grindr in Thailand. And I was like, wow, that is just such a different experience
Probably
than
had
my
his Airbnb all picked out.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, when I was on the road, I was gone. There was no way to get, I wasn't in touch with anyone. Like, I was just meditating to California.
Yeah, it was so different to take those big trips back
Yeah.
then because we really only had ourselves, and our grit to rely on.
Yeah. And, being aware and you kind of got to be street smart about things. And it's not like you're
Yeah.
looking at reviews. So
Yeah.
you figure things out.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know, because I know from your perspective, Me Too is a great thing. Do you think it emerged organically? Are you seeing any downsides to that movement and how it's shifted our culture?
No, I don't think there's any downside to women not being manhandled and raped.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can't see any. If that has led to some confusion about permissions between the genders, that's a very small price to pay for the light that's been shed on how women have been treated.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. And what's your take on like a woman taking a meeting with someone in a hotel room at midnight? Like, is there any onus on her for putting herself in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not normal business hours. And that's not,
right.
I mean, down in the lobby maybe, like, but midnight in a hotel room, probably is not going to lead to anything good.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Um,
Ironically, I met the person that you're referring to, the man,
mhm.
and he actually tried to manipulate me, and it didn't work.
So there we go. Why didn't it work?
I trusted in my own power and talent, and then ironically, I ended up I ended up having a meeting at his production company because my manager set it up
Hmm. I
through
love
my
that.
own power and talent.
Hmm. Yeah,
So just trusting that, I
yeah.
guess. Like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, this is something that I saw, having grown up in LA, so I was obviously there for a while, and like I did see it shift, in terms of shirts getting shorter, tops getting skimpier, and from my perspective thinking like that's not super safe. Like I think it's all on the table, and there are definitely times where I would dress skimpy, less so anymore, but it was
Yeah.
always me having my own back. And like, okay, if I'm going to a party like in Crenshaw by myself, I'm not going to dress like that because that's not going to be safe. And so there's one part of, one thing that I'm seeing about this situation is that not seeing women not necessarily have their own backs or have that street smarts to know, like if someone's inviting me to their hotel room at 12 o'clock, that's a no. Or if someone's inviting me into their house after a date, if I'm not willing to get naked, then that's also a no. Just like seeing where women can take more responsibility so that we are
Okay.
having our own backs.
So I've developed a character within myself that I call my 1950s father.
Okay.
So like you know how like and maybe this goes back I'm sure this goes back way older in time, but I'm like, I gotta put my 1950s dad hat on, because there would be accountability. Typically people were still, the woman, the wife and the father were in the home. The boy or the guy would have to go to the door. Oh, I'm here to take Jennifer out. The father would size him up, maybe what are your intentions with my daughter? You better have her home by 10.
Yeah.
So when you say self-responsibility, I've really like developed this kind of, it's almost like a character that I have like fun with. And I'm like, I don't know. What would my 1950s father say right now? And so you do have to, ultimately, you have to protect yourself.
Yes,
Yeah. And if you
exactly.
didn't have that kind of father, which I didn't really have that kind of father and still don't, it's like a quality that I had to, it's a self-protective mechanism that I had to develop.
Yeah, and good for you for developing that self-protective mechanism. I see it from all angles, and for me, I'm always looking at like where can I, as a woman, take responsibility, and I think that's something that would be wonderful to start teaching to like junior high school girls is saying no. And being really aware of how men, when they see a hot woman, they're not like us, where they're like, oh, he's my soulmate and we're going to buy a house together and live. They're like, I want to penetrate that,
Yeah.
and I think that,
Let's go in there.
right, and I think that women or girls especially don't really get how different we are and how differently we're wired.